In the forest of Wisconsin, rare orchids and lilies are disappearing. Hardwoods and hemlocks have failed to reproduce for 50 years. In a town in New York, a 1,000-acre park has been stripped bare of exotic plants, and the Gulf greens are full of holes. On my dad's farm in northeast Kansas, rows of crops are being eaten up before they grow tall enough to be harvested. What menace is causing all these problems throughout the United States? It is none other than Bambi's relatives, the white-tailed deer. American white-tailed deer are just part of a worldwide population explosion of the deer species. As a result, rare plants and animals, and even entire forests are in danger. You too could also be in danger, as these deer become hazards to drivers on the road. Something must be done about this deer overpopulation problem before more irreparable damage can be done. Today I'll look at the causes of deer overpopulation, the effects of this population growth, and some solutions to stopping this menace. There are several reasons why deer have become so numerous. The main reason that deer become so populated is by their ability to adapt. Deer can be found virtually anywhere in the world. In fact, some deer reports say there are about 25 million deer in the United States. But how have they become so populated? Haven't they always been so numerous? Well, around the beginning of the 1900s, deer numbers dwindled around 500,000. Some farmers can remember when it made the front page if a deer had been spotted. The population slowly climbed its way up throughout the century and was helped along the way by a few key steps. During the 50s and 60s, the deer's main causes of death were to wolves, bears, screwworm flies, and hunters. A program during that time eliminated the screwworm flies, and the wolf and bear numbers started to drop. Hunters weren't even allowed to hunt in Kansas during this time. They had banned hunting during the 1800s for fear of wiping out the population, and never reopened it until 1964. They also never had predators such as wolves or bears to affect the population. Another cause of overpopulation is humans moving into the deer's habitat. This may have been one of the biggest reasons of all. By doing this, humans provided an excellent environment for the deer to survive. The suburbs provided good quality food, areas where deer can hide, and protection against predators and hunters. Their gardens and plants were very nutritional to the deer and created a very healthy population. A healthy deer is how things can really get out of hand. Most people don't realize how quickly a population can rise. Female deer can start to reproduce as young as 6 months old. If they're healthy, it's not uncommon to see deer have 2 fawns per year, sometimes even triplets. By 10 years, one doe and her offspring can put out around 100 fawns. When deer are this successful, they can easily double their population in just a few years. When deer populations get this large, the problems that come with them are even larger. Probably the most significant problem of deer is car-deer collisions. Just about everyone's either been in this type of crash or knows someone who has. These crashes cause over $1 billion of damage each year in the United States. There's usually about 500,000 accidents per year, reports Insurance Information Institute. They go on to say, of those accidents, over 100 people are killed and 29,000 people are injured. Kansas reported 8,415 collisions in 1996. Deer also cause a hefty amount of damage each year to crops and landscape. They usually cause an excess of $50 million of damage to crops in the United States. This makes deer the #1 vertebrate pest in the major crop-producing states. In Kansas during 1964, only 6% of landowners complained about deer. That number was 10 times higher in 1996 at 60%. Deer also cause a significant amount of damage to landscape. Northeast Coast officials report $250 million of damage yearly due to deer feeding on gardens, plants, trees, and shrubbery. Their overbrowsing is probably most obvious in parks. Sharon Woods is a park in Columbus, Ohio that was destroyed by deer. Larry Peck is the assistant director of Franklin County Parks and reports. From a height of 6 feet down, there was nothing but deer and pawpaws, a native plant that they don't like. They ate everything else, even the bark off the trees. With all of this habitat gone, the wildlife that lived in it was gone as well. Deer encounters with the public are becoming more and more numerous as well. In 1994, a deer made its way into a passage terminal at an airport near Washington, D.C. Northampton, Massachusetts has seen deer in an art store, a college dining hall, and a supermarket. These encounters with the public increase the chance of deer transporting deer ticks, which carry Lyme disease. In Westchester County, New York, a boy's parents were informed that their son had Lyme disease and had probably contracted it from deer in their backyard. So what can we do to control these animals? Well, the most effective and cost-efficient method is to have them hunted. Richard McCabe is a biologist with the Wildlife Management Institute and reports, with wolves, mountain lions, and other major predators gone from the cities and suburbs, there is virtually no urban control except hunting. William McShay from the Smithsonian Institute agrees with McCabe. Right now, hunting is the only solution available. Some experts estimate that without hunting, deer may be 5 times more numerous than they are now. Hunting isn't the only alternative we have. Others include dairy-resistant plants, dairy pellet soaps, and electric fences. They may work to a minimum, but the bottom line is they don't get rid of the deer. The deer-resistant plants can falter because the deer will just browse on all your other plants and leave the deer-resistant plants alone. The soaps only repel deer in a 3-foot area, so you'd have to buy countless bars of soap just for an average-sized lawn. The electric fences are not only expensive, but they can be dangerous to people as well. Not to mention they're not very eye-appealing. George Harrison writes, "Numerous methods of control have been attempted, but except for shooting the deer outright, nothing is proven effective." So with hunting being the most sensible alternative, how should we go about it? Kansas has already taken steps to allow hunting to assist with the problem. In 1995 and 1996, they issued an additional 15% of licenses. In 1997, they issued 20% more licenses. That means an additional 15,000 licenses were available to hunters. The state of Kansas needs to do more, though. Kansas needs to drop their current rates for out-of-state hunters. The cost for a license for an out-of-state hunter is $250.50. Kansas residents only have to pay $30.50 for a permit. Experts also say that to efficiently reduce the population, hunters should concentrate on females. So this year, Kansas opened the season back up for 1 weekend in January for antlerless permits only. In conclusion, deer overpopulation is a threat to you, me, and the world we live in. But hunting is a solution. We all cried when Bambi's mother was shot by a hunter, but we were just children then. Today as adults, we mourn the loss of exotic plants and animals, and even humans. According to Bill Armstrong, the assistant project leader at the Kerr Wildlife Management Area in Texas, man, as a hunter, has been an important part of this ecological system since the days of the Native Americans. But people don't grow up with hunting like they used to. Their attitudes have changed. It's hard to overcome the Bambi mentality, but I say it's time to.
To hear. These 3 words are, I love you. Yet, these 2 words seem most difficult to utter, as shown by the narrator of this story. Good night, Dad, by Luke and Grace. Are you afraid of heights? My dad asked, as I climbed up the ladder to the 2nd-story rooftop. I was up there to help fix our TV antenna. Not yet, I replied, as he climbed it back to me with tools in hand. I didn't have much to do up there on the roof. Mostly I just held the antenna still and handed my dad the tools. So I began to talk to him as he worked. I could always talk to my dad. He seemed more like a big kid than an actual adult. In fact, he looked much younger than his 41 years. He had straight black hair and a mustache, with no signs of graying or balding, and stood at a strong 6 feet and had dark green eyes that seemed to always be laughing at some secret joke. And even my friends, whom he made fun of without mercy, loved him. Most of my peers would be embarrassed to have their dad hang around with them, but not me. In fact, I took great pride in him. No one else had a dad as cool as mine. After we finished working on the antenna, we went inside and began to get ready for bed. As I entered my room, I looked over and saw my dad working intensely at his computer in his office, which was adjacent to my bedroom. And as I watched him, I had the most incredible urge to just poke my head in and tell him I loved him. but I quickly brushed the urge away and continued on to my room. I couldn't possibly say to him, "I love you." I hadn't said that to him or anyone else since I was 7. And Mom and Dad would come and tuck me in and kiss me goodnight. But as I walked in and closed my bedroom door behind me, the feeling continued to grow. So I turned around, opened my door, and poked my head in his office. "Dad?" "Yes." I could feel my heartbeat rising. I just want to say good night." "Good night," he said. I went back to my room and shut the door. Why didn't I say it? What was I afraid of? I told myself that maybe I had the courage to say it later. Even as I told myself that, I knew it might never happen. For some reason, I felt that was going to be the closest I'd ever come to telling my dad I loved him. And it made me frustrated and angry with myself. So deep within me, I began to hope that he'd know that when I said goodnight, I really meant to say I love you. The next day seemed like any other. After school, I began to walk with my best friend to her house, as I frequently do. However, her mom surprised us by picking us up in the parking lot. When she asked me whose house I was going to, and I said yours, she paused and said, "No, I have this feeling your mom probably wants you home right now." I didn't suspect anything. I figured she had something she wanted to do with her own family, and so I shouldn't butt in. But as we pulled to my house, I noticed a lot of cars in front, and quite a few people I knew walking up our front steps. My mom greeted me at the front door. Her face was streaming with tears. She then told me, in the calmest voice she could manage, the worst news of my life. Dad's dead. At first, I just stood there as she hugged me, unable to move or react. In my mind, I kept repeating, "Oh God, no! This can't be true! Please!" But I knew I wasn't being lied to. I felt tears begin to roll down my face as I quickly hugged some of the people who came over. Then I went upstairs to my room. As I got there, I looked over to my dad's office. Why didn't I say it? That was when I heard my little 3-year-old brother ask, "Mommy, why is Sissy crying?" "She's just feeling a bit tired, honey." I heard my mom tell him as I closed my bedroom door behind me. She hadn't told him yet that Daddy might be coming home from work. Once in my room, I hurt so badly that my body was numb and I collapsed on the floor sobbing. A few moments later, I heard a scream from downstairs. Then my baby brother's voice crying out, "Why, Mommy?" My mom had just told him what had happened. A few seconds later, she came up to my room and handed me my crying baby brother. She told me to answer his questions while she stayed downstairs to greet the people who came over. So for the next half hour, I tried to explain to him why Heavenly Father wanted our dad back with him, while I simultaneously tried to pull myself back together. I was told that my father had died in an accident at work. He worked in construction, and somehow he'd been knocked off the crane he was inspecting. Some workers nearby said they didn't hear him shout or anything, but I'd ran over to him when they were on land. He was pronounced dead on arrival around 11 o'clock that morning, April 21st, 1993. I never really told my dad I loved him. I wish I had. I miss him very much. When I see him again after this life, I know that the first thing I'm going to say to him is, "I love you." Until then, good night, Dad.
You ever wish for immortality? If so, you're not alone. Humans have always wanted to cheat death by trying weird and magical things. We've been going to witches, nymphs, wizards, and magicians for thousands of years to try and prolong death. Ben Franklin had a great idea.